time to explore how plants breathe. We're diving into a chapter from a biology textbook about plant respiration, and I gotta tell you, I had no idea how complex it is.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating how these organisms manage to, essentially breathe without having anything like lungs.
Right, like how does that even work? I'm dying to know more about that. But first, maybe a really quick overview. What exactly is plant respiration?
Well, in the simplest terms, respiration in plants is kind of like the flip side of photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis is where they make food using sunlight, right?
Exactly. Using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. They create sugars for energy. Now, respiration is where they actually use that energy.
Makes sense. So they're taking in oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide, just like we do when we breathe.
Yep, pretty much. They're breaking down those sugars to release energy for growth, reproduction, and all the other things they need to do to survive.
So no lungs, but they still gotta breathe.
Okay, so how do they manage to exchange gases without lungs? Well, they've got these clever little openings called stomata, mostly on their leaves and stems, and lenticels on woody
It
parts.
looks like they have tiny mouths all over.
Sort of, these openings allow oxygen to enter and carbon dioxide to exit, just like our lungs do for us.
That's pretty cool. So it's like a plant-wide breathing system.
You could say that, and they're incredibly efficient at it thanks to their unique structure and the slower respiration rate of plants compared to, like, us fast-moving animals.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, if they're breathing, that means they need energy, right?
Yeah.
We eat to fuel up. But what's the plant equivalent of, like, chowing down on a burger?
Well, the source of energy for all organisms, whether it's a plant or a person, is the oxidation of food molecules.
Oxidation.
Yeah, it's basically a chemical reaction where electrons are transferred and energy is released.
Got it. So how do plants get those food molecules in the first place?
That's where the magic of photosynthesis comes in. Green plants and some bacteria, like cyanobacteria, are the only ones that can actually make their own food through photosynthesis.
Right. That's where they use sunlight to create those sugars, like glucose.
Exactly. They're like their own little food factories. But even in plants, not every single cell is photosynthesizing.
Oh, right. Like the roots, for example.
Right.
They're underground in the dark. How do they get their energy fix?
That's a great point. The plant has to transport the sugars produced in the leaves, where photosynthesis happens, to all the other parts that need energy.
So it's like an internal delivery service for sugary goodness.
Exactly. And then you have, organisms that don't photosynthesize at all, like fungi.
Right, fungi. They're not plants, but they're not animals either. How do they get their energy?
Well, fungi are saprophytes, meaning they get their energy from breaking down dead and decaying organic matter.
So they're like the recyclers of the ecosystem.
Yeah, pretty much. But even their energy source, ultimately traces back to photosynthesis.
Wow, so it's all connected in the end. Okay, let's go back to how plants break down those sugars to get energy. What's that first step?
The first step is a process called glycolysis. And believe it or not, it's happening in your cells right now, too.
Glycolysis. That sounds intense. What's going on there?
Well, the word itself means sugar splitting, and that's pretty much what's happening. Glucose, which is a simple sugar, is broken down into a molecule called pyruvic acid.
So it's like they're splitting sugar to extract energy.
Yeah.
Cool. And what happens next?
From there, things get interesting. The path depends on whether oxygen is readily available. If it's limited, the process heads toward what's called fermentation.
Fermentation, like with beer and bread.
Exactly. There are actually two main types: alcoholic fermentation, which is what yeasts do, and lactic acid fermentation.
So that's how we get those fluffy loaves of bread and, yes, our favorite beers.
Yep. And lactic acid fermentation happens in bacteria. You actually use it in your muscles, too, when you're working out really hard.
Oh, right, like when you feel that burn in your legs after a good run.
That's it. So it's kind of like a backup plan when oxygen is scarce. But what about when there's plenty of oxygen available?
Yeah, what happens then?
Well, that's when the real energy production magic happens. We're talking about aerobic respiration.
Aerobic meaning with oxygen, right?
Exactly. And this process occurs within the mitochondria of cells, those tiny powerhouses where energy is generated.
Okay, so aerobic respiration, what's the deal with that?
It's way more efficient than fermentation. With aerobic respiration, glucose is completely broken down into carbon dioxide and water, releasing a ton of energy.
So it's like the ultimate energy extraction process.
You could say that, and it's absolutely crucial for plants to grow, thrive, and do all the amazing things they do. Back again for more on plant respiration, ready to dig deeper.
Oh, absolutely. We touched on those stomata and lenticels, those little openings for gas exchange. but I want to know more. How do they actually work?
Right, so let's focus on the stomata for a sec. Those tiny pores on leaves and stems. Think of them like little gateways, and the gatekeepers are these specialized cells. They're called guard cells.
Guard cell. Okay, I'm listening.
So these guard cells can actually open and close those stomata, controlling the flow of gases in and out. Pretty neat, huh?
So they're like regulating traffic, deciding when to let oxygen in and carbon dioxide out.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that the opening and closing of these stomata are affected by like a bunch of different things.
What kind of things?
Well, light is a big one. Plants need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, so they open up those stomata when the sun's out.
Makes sense. They got to catch those rays and make some food.
Exactly. But it's not just sunlight. Water availability matters too. You know, if a plant's getting thirsty, it's going to close up its stomata to conserve water.
Smart move. Don't want
Yeah.
to dry out. So it's like this balancing act between getting enough carbon dioxide and not losing too much water.
Right on. And this actually highlights a really important point. Plant respiration isn't just about breathing. It's totally intertwined with photosynthesis and all these other metabolic processes happening inside the plant.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here,
Yeah.
like a whole system working together.
It is. Now, we talked about how aerobic respiration can give you like 38 ATP molecules from one glucose molecule.
Right, that was impressive.
But plants can also get energy from other sources like fats and proteins.
Oh yeah, I was wondering about that. Do those give them the same energy bang for their buck as sugars?
Well, breaking those down is a bit more complex. They have to be converted into forms that can enter the respiratory pathway.
So like translated into the language that the plant's energy system understands.
Pretty much. And, you know, it's hard to say exactly how efficient respiration is compared to something like photosynthesis.
I see, like which one is the energy superstar?
Yeah, I mean, photosynthesis is amazing at capturing light energy and turning it into those sugars, but respiration is a master at extracting that energy from the sugar.
So it's like a perfect partnership.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears and talk about oxygen's role in all this. It's a VIP in aerobic respiration, right? But what is it actually doing?
Yeah, break it down for me.
So, remember that electron transport system, the grand finale of respiration?
The one where those energy carriers, NADH and FADH2, are showing off. Yeah, I remember.
Well, oxygen is the star of that show. It's the final electron acceptor at the very end of that chain. Oxygen combines with the electrons and some protons to form water.
Okay, and why is that so important?
Well, imagine if those electrons weren't removed. The whole system backs up, kind of like a traffic jam.
And then no more energy production.
Exactly. Aerobic respiration needs that steady oxygen supply to keep things running smoothly.
So it's all about keeping those electrons flowing. Now, you mentioned earlier that some organisms can survive without oxygen, using fermentation. How does that work?
Good question. You see, with fermentation, it's a way to regenerate NAD plus say, which is crucial for glycolysis to keep going.
So fermentation is like a lifeline when oxygen is scarce.
You got it. But we also know that fermentation isn't nearly as efficient at producing ATP as aerobic respiration.
So it's like running on fumes.
A good way to put it. It helps some organisms survive in those oxygen-poor environments, but it's not ideal in the long run.
Got it. So there are different levels of respiration, each with its own pros and cons. That's super interesting. Is there anything else I should know about respiration in plants?
Oh, there's always more to learn. But one thing people often forget is the impact of temperature. Respiration, like all chemical reactions, is sensitive to those temperature changes.
Right, makes sense. Like when it's hotter, molecules move faster, so
Mhm.
maybe reactions happen faster too.
Exactly. Within a certain range, warmer temps mean faster respiration rates. But of course, there's a limit.
Oh yeah, like if it gets too hot.
Yep, those enzymes, the ones that help these reactions happen, they can get denatured at high temperatures.
Denatured, meaning they basically stop working.
Exactly, like a car engine overheating. And if those enzymes aren't working, respiration and a lot of other processes come to a screeching halt.
Got it. So plants need that sweet spot, not too hot, not too cold.
Exactly. And this highlights another important point. All these environmental factors like light, temperature, water, carbon dioxide, they're all playing a role, you know? Plants are constantly adjusting to these changes to find that perfect balance.
Like a delicate dance, keeping all those things in harmony.
Right. And that's just a glimpse into the complexity and awesomeness of plants.
This has been seriously fascinating. I feel like I'm looking at plants in a whole new light now. Ready for the final part of our deep dive?
Let's do it. I've got some final thoughts to share that'll really tie everything together.
All right, we're back. Ready to wrap up our plant respiration deep dive? I'm feeling pretty amazed by all this tiny scale action going on inside plants.
It really is remarkable, isn't it? Now,
Yeah.
we've talked about all the inner workings, but I want to zoom out for a sec. Why is respiration as so important for plants in the big picture? I mean, obviously they need energy to grow, but is that all?
What else is going on? Spill the beans.
Well, think about it. Respiration is powering all those essential functions, like absorbing nutrients from the soil, moving sugars around, building new cells and tissues. I mean, it's the foundation of plant life.
Right, so it's like not just growth, but also just keeping everything running smoothly.
Yep. And here's something that might surprise you. Respiration's a key player in how plants defend themselves, too.
Wait, hold on. Defense. How does breathing help a plant fight off attackers?
Well, when a plant is under attack, by things like pathogens or herbivores that want to munch on them, it can actually trigger this super fast respiratory response.
So it's like red alert. Got to ramp up the energy production.
Exactly. That boost in respiration helps the plant produce all sorts of defensive compounds, things like phytoalexins and pathogenesis-related proteins.
Okay, so it's like fueling up for battle.
Yep, you could say that. And, it's not just defense. Respiration also plays a role in signaling pathways that help plants respond to environmental stresses, things like drought or crazy temperatures.
Wow, so it's involved in like everything. Growth, maintenance, defense, responding to stress. It's like respiration is the control center for the whole plant.
I like that, the control center. It's this multifaceted powerhouse. And you know what? This actually highlights a really cool connection between all living things. We may look different on the outside, but at the cellular level, plants and animals, we're sharing many of the same metabolic pathways, including respiration.
That's kind of mind-blowing. Like, we're all united by this unseen world of energy and metabolism.
I know, right? It really emphasizes how interconnected life on Earth is.
Totally. Well, we've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive. Any last thoughts you want to leave us with, something to ponder?
Yeah, one last thing to think about. Since we know how vital respiration is for plants, imagine the impact that climate change could have on this process. Rising temperatures and changing atmospheric conditions, they can really mess with respiration rates. And that could affect plant growth, development, even their ability to defend themselves.
Wow, yeah. It makes you realize that everything is connected, from the smallest plant cell to the global climate. It's not just about breathing, it's about the survival of these amazing organisms.
It really is. And understanding these connections can help us make smarter choices about how we interact with the natural world.
Well said. I'm walking away from this deep dive feeling seriously impressed by the power of plants and the awesomeness of respiration. Thanks for taking us on this journey.
Happy to do it. Keep that curiosity alive and never stop exploring.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into plant respiration. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic, ready to uncover more hidden wonders of our world. Until then, stay curious.